Krishna We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10, Text 3. And it is a weird verse. In Sanskrit. It's not the singing verse. Atata Ishvara Vacha
Ata Ishvara Vacha
Atata Ishvara Vacha
Atata Ishvara Vacha
Sopalambam Upakarnyopayam
Supalambam Upakanyopaya
Sopalambam Upakarnyopayam
Supalambam Upakanyopaya
Turyachchankita manasas
Shantika Manasas
Turyachchankita manasas
Shantika Manasas
Tam Vikyapayam Bahu
Tam Vyapayam Bahu
Tam Vigyapayam Babu
Tam Vyapayam Bahu
Atata Ishvara Vacha
Atata Ishvara Vacha
Sopalambam Upakarnyopaya
Supalambam Upakanyopaya
Turiya Chankita Manasasa
Shantika Manasas
Tam Vigyapayam Babu
Tam Vyapayam Bahu
Ata
Ata
Das
Das
Te
Te
Day
They
The carriers of palanquin
The carriers of the palanquin
Ishvara Vacha
Ishvara Vacha
The words of the master
The words of the master
King Rahugana
King Mahugana
Saupalambam
Sampulambam
with reproach
His reproach
Upakarnyam
Upakanya
hearing
Hearing
Upaya
Upaya
the means
The means
Turiyat
Turiyat
from the fourth one
From the first one
Shankita Manasaha
Shankita Manasaha
whose minds were afraid
Whose minds were afraid
Tam
Tam
him the king
Him the king
Vigyapayam Babuhu
Vyapayam Bahu
informed
Informed
Translation When the palanquin carriers heard the threatening words of Maharaj Rahugana, they became very afraid of his punishment and began to speak to him as follows. Purport. According to political science, a king sometimes tries to pacify his subordinates, sometimes chastises them, sometimes divides them, and sometimes rewards them. In this way, the king rules his subordinates. The bearers of the palanquin could understand that the king was angry and that he would chastise them. So that's the verse. That's why I said, so what are you going to talk about there? But yeah, you can talk many things. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnupada Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, my first question will be towards you. So did you listen to the lectures of Maharaja Hugana? And Jadabharata, like here in the temple or somewhere else, or you also read the Srimad Bhagavatam, so you know the story?
Jarat Bharata, yeah, but I didn't start the chapter 10, so I don't know Maharaj Rahugana actually. I just,
Okay.
my last lecture was like when the goddess Kali was like
Killing
killing
the
everybody.
everyone, yeah. But you know that, like, who is Jadabharata?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us, who is he?
So, I mean, it's the reincarnation, I can say, or of Maharaj Bharat.
Yeah, like
After he became a deer, and then he take again a human body in Jarat Bharat, and then um, um, Vish, no, yeah, again in a farmer family, but
in
he
a
was, I
Brahmana
mean,
family, he was born.
yeah, but he was playing the role of a really
Deaf, dumb,
yeah,
person. Yeah.
and then yeah, that's so my last lecture. It's like the priest from Goddess Kali. They brought him to the temple to make a sacrifice, and then yeah, the Goddess Kali appeared to stop this nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And she killed all of them.
yeah,
Because they were not actually following even because it is allowed according to the Vedas for some people to eat meat
Yeah.
and to offer meat to Goddess Kali because they're situated in the modes of ignorance, but not men. Like that they said like that it's men who is like an animal, so therefore he can also be offered to Goddess Kali, which was wrong. And also they
Yeah.
got the wrong guy, but even
Yeah.
if it wasn't the wrong guy, it wouldn't be allowed. She was not pleased like with these things. Yes, and then so Jadabharata is like, I mean, really trying to be detached from the material world and from people and from society. You were also listening before lectures about Jadabharata and Maharaj Rahugana, no? Do you know who is Jadabharata? It's okay, I'm just so that I know like what to say. Yeah, so he was mentioning that he was actually Bharat Maharaj, who was a very exalted king, and he left his kingdom in order to perform meditation, and he wanted to go back home, back to Godhead. But while he was performing his meditations and austerities, because he was like a Varnaprastha, I read somewhere that they are translated as forest dwellers. So he went to the forest to perform austerities there, like to purify himself and to understand God. And he did in a way, because it is described in the scriptures that he had reached the level of Baba, which means that he already has this connection and relationship with the Lord, certain emotions, and only little was missing to really reach Prema and then to go back home, back to Godhead. When he saw a little deer, because her mother, she died, and then she left this little deer, and he felt sorry for her, and that was actually the sign of a pure devotee, because a pure devotee has a soft heart, so of course he will help the deer. But he became too attached, so constantly he was thinking about this deer. And this deer, one day she got lost, and then he wanted to find her, and he was constantly thinking about it. But the time of his death came, and he was thinking about the deer, not about Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he was not performing his devotional service. So that's why he became a deer in the next life. But he had mercy on Krishna because he was really advanced. So he got this boon that he can remember his previous life. So that's horrible. He was in a body of a deer with everything the body brings, but he could remember everything. So he had the knowledge, intelligence, remembrance of his previous life, and he knew about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But also, this was horrible in a way, but in a way very good, because then he could really understand that he's not this body. So then he was given another opportunity to get a human form of life, and then, of course, as a deer, he was thinking all the time about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he got a new body as Jadabharata, and he was born in a Brahmana family, and it was an exalted birth because He had facilities where he could like learn Vedic knowledge, advance spiritually, but he didn't want to have anything to do even with that, because even these rules and regulations of the four divisions of life, like for example, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Brahmanas, and Shudras. So this is all external things that people do because they're on a bodily platform, and therefore they are purifying themselves to understand one day that they're a spirit soul. But he already knew he's a spirit soul, that he's not that body. So he pretended that he's a little bit dumb, that he's deaf and not catching things very quickly. So everyone thought he was stupid in a way. And also his father, it's interesting how it was described that his father wanted to teach him about like Vedic way of life and rules, and one of the rules is to be clean. So, but he didn't want to like follow the rules. Like for example, when he would go to the toilet, his father would say like after the toilet you have to like wash your feet or hands, and then you can do stuff. But he would never do that. He would wash his feet and hands before going to the toilet. So everyone thought he was a little bit stupid. But he was doing this on purpose so that he doesn't get involved in anything like society, like nothing. He just wanted to, meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that was it. So that's why he was treated badly, but he didn't care, because that's very interesting, because all of us, we have this tendency to think, which is a right tendency in this world. When someone treats us badly, we feel unhappy, we want some justice. When someone treats us nicely, then we feel very happy. But he didn't care about these things, because these things come from sense perception, which comes from the body. And he was thinking, he didn't think, he knew that he is not this body. So therefore, he just acted this way. And then his father died, and his mother performed sati. She went with the father, and she left him because the father had two wives. And so he left him with a stepbrother, and sisters and stepmother. And they also didn't like him very much because they thought he was a little bit weird. So they would send him like in the fields to like take care of the crops, like during the night, like some, not very important tasks. But if he would, for example, if he would listen to his father, if he would, perform everything they said, then he would actually be exalted in the society. Everyone would admire him because he would be very knowledgeable and so on. But he didn't want that. He just rejected all of these things, and he just wanted to be left alone so he doesn't end up being something again in the next life. Mm-hmm. And so he was alone in the forest, or no, in the fields. And then it's called dacoits, or some kind of like people who have ill intentions, and they're crooked, they steal and so on. So they were worshipping goddess Kali, and they wanted to offer him as a sacrifice to goddess Kali. So Srila Prabhupada explains why. Because I was talking about on Sunday about the Vedas, and how there are certain parts of the Vedas which are meant for people in ignorance. So they allow you to eat meat. And the way it is like described, this sacrifice for Kali, is that yes, you are allowed to eat the flesh of the animals that have lower consciousness, like goats, for example, it is written there. But when you kill an animal, you have to, I think that they even say that, yes, they say to this soul, which is in the animal, that you have a right to kill me in your next life. So they have to say it in order to be aware that they will have a karmic consequence of killing other living entities for food. But of course they didn't follow this part, and also they interpreted the part of offering an animal that they can actually offer even a human who is like an animal, because there are some people who just act in a certain way. They have a human body, but they're mad, for example, and they act in a certain way. So they thought like, they saw Jadabharata and his external behavior, which was weird. They thought like, oh, here's a madman, like let's offer him. And he was dirty. He had a Brahmana thread, but his Brahmana thread was black. So, he didn't do anything properly, so that's why they thought like, well, let's take him. But externally he looked like that, but internally he was a great devotee of the Lord. And they brought him in front of goddess Kali, and then, because she knew who Jadabharata was, she got very angry, and that's like a description that's not very nice. Srimad Bhagavatam, what she does. So they try to offer him, and it's very nice. Like they washed him, they put a tilak on him, they decorated him with garlands, they fed him like everything nice so that he can be, offered very clean to Goddess Kali. So it's just like how people think. So everything was clean for her, and then of course, because she knew who he was, she got angry at these people who wanted to offer him to her. So she came out of, out of the deity herself personally, along with the witches and some demonesses, and she chopped all their heads and sucked their blood. So that's what Goddess Kali does. And yeah, and all the witches and everyone else did that the same. So, but this is like an example of how wrong, you're going the wrong way if you do that. Of course, Goddess Kali should be respected. And actually there are many features of Goddess Kali, not just this fearsome one. There's a peaceful one also, because she's actually a wife of Lord Shiva. So, but they wanted to worship this one, which was very aggressive and so on. So they got what they deserved in a way. And then Jadabharata was left alone, and he was, I don't know, I guess wandering throughout the world. And then this Maharaj, Raghugana, he was a king. It's described of which country or province, but I don't know now by heart. He was the ruler of states known as Sindhu and Sauvira. But I'm not so good in that old history, geography, so I don't know. But somewhere in India. And anyway, his servants, they saw Jadabharata, and they were missing one person to carry the palanquin of the king. So they thought he was the perfect person to do it because he looked very strong, he had developed muscles, he was young, so on. So they thought he's the good person to do it. And he was a kind of person, which is also very interesting and very instructive for us, that he would accept everything that would come to him in life, whether it was good, it was bad, he would say okay. And he didn't care, because even when he was living his life, he was so detached that he didn't bathe, right? We said he had a black brahmana thread, and also he would eat whatever he would get. It doesn't matter. It is actually a description of the saintly person that he doesn't eat things because they are palatable. He just eats things because he wants to keep his soul and body together so he can perform spiritual activities. So he doesn't care what the senses say or what the mind say. So he just eats whatever comes. So in the same way, these people came and they told him you should carry the palanquin, and he said, okay, I'll carry the palanquin. But then Srila Prabhupada describes
What is palanquin?
this a seat that they carry. It has two sticks, and then each person puts it on the shoulder, and he sits on that, right? I think that's it. So in the old times, you can see it in the movies, that royal persons were carried like that by their servants or slaves. So just that I remember what I wanted to say. Yes. So even though externally he looked the way he looked, so people thought he was a little bit, but he was a devotee inside, and so he acted like a devotee. Even externally he looked in a certain way. His effulgence as a devotee was covered by these external features, but in a way they were also exhibited in his behavior, for example, towards others, because a devotee doesn't want to hurt anyone, like any living entity, whether it's in a human body or animal body. So while he was walking, carrying this palanquin of the king, he didn't carry it properly because there were ants on the ground passing by, and he didn't want to step on them. So you can imagine how it looked like when he was carrying the palanquin, and ants are everywhere where you walk. So he was very careful. And then, all the other three guys, they couldn't carry the palanquin nicely for the king, and the king was getting disturbed. And then he started yelling at them what are you doing? How can you treat me? I'm your king, and so on. So that's how we come to this verse. Number 3, when the palanquin carriers heard the threatening words of Maharaj Rahugana, they became very afraid of his punishment and began to speak to him as follows. So basically what they will do is they will say, this guy, he's guilty of you being disturbed because he's not carrying the palanquin in a nice way. And the story is very nice because it talks about the realization of Jada Bharata, of how he's not this body, and he will actually explain it in a metaphorical way. That's why there are many chapters here. So next chapter is the story which it's not a story, he talks about like why are certain things the way they are by using metaphors. But then in the chapter after that, Maharaj Rahugana will say like, I don't understand you quite, so you have to again repeat and explain everything. So you will listen in future lectures in detail, like all these things. But this whole incident happened so that actually Maharaj Rahugana could get purified, because he was also a very pious king, but in ignorance, because he was attached to his family, to his kingdom. He thought he was a king. And then by the order of providence, some would say, but by the mercy of Krishna, he met Jada Bharata, who then got the opportunity to speak to him and purify him, because he was a great devotee. And Maharaj Rahugana will understand that, and then he will approach him as a disciple approaches a guru and ask him certain questions, and he will get answers. But first he will be very rude to Jada Bharata, because he doesn't understand who Jada Bharata is. He just will yell at him, and he will say many not nice things that actually would offend anyone. Like if you were treated like that by anyone, you would feel very hurt, very offended, and so on. But Jada Bharata didn't. He just said like, and this is something that my spiritual master, he likes to tell this story, because this story helped him in his devotional life, and I will also refer to that. But basically, what he told him was not nice things, and like, who are you to treat me this way? I'm your king, you're my servant. Like, you have to, do your duty, and so on. And then Jada Bharata, he's like, I'm actually not offended by anything that you say, and actually, maybe now you were a king, and now I am a servant. But in next life, things can change. So, like, don't be so attached to it. So that's the philosophy with which he starts. But the whole point is like that his detachment from everything. And this detachment from everything allowed him actually even to share the knowledge to Maharaj Rahugana, so that he can understand and the words can have the potency. But I would like to refer to my spiritual master as well, because I like this story, because I personally often find myself in situations in which I feel offended, in which I feel really hurt, and especially if it comes from someone who is like practicing devotional service as you are, then you're like, so I gotta tolerate this. And but we know that the person who tolerates everything that comes to him in life and chants the holy name of the Lord, that person will actually reach God. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exemplified that, because he was very humble, very tolerant, and he would offer respects to everyone. And for example, one of the examples in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited this quality is when he wanted to preach to the sannyasis of Varanasi. So he was a young sannyasi, he just took initiation as a sannyasi, and he was wandering around, dressed as a sannyasi, and he also took it from sampradaya which was impersonalistic, Shankacharya sampradaya. That's another story, just that you know. And all these sannyasis who take sannyasa from this line, what they do is that they sit somewhere in a peaceful place and they just study Vedanta. And they don't go around, and they're like detached from everything and so on. But you had Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who was dancing and singing like all the time. And while dancing and singing, he would exhibit these ecstatic symptoms of crying, perspiring, shaking, and so on. So they thought he was crazy in a way, because whatever is weird, and it is described in the scriptures that people like that who behave in this way are either liberated from material conditioning or mad. So that's why you can't recognize it sometimes, and that's why it is also said like, don't criticize the devotees because you don't know. You cannot know the internal life of a devotee. That's also another story. But let's go back to Lord Chaitanya. So he was doing these things, and these sannyasis, they would criticize him all the time. And his followers, they were like really mad because like, how can you tolerate these things? Like they criticize you all the time. Like you should say something. But he didn't say, and he left Varanasi and he went somewhere on his pilgrimage. But he came back, and when he came back, then he decided that he should also liberate them. But he didn't tell anyone. And then one Brahmana came and he invited him in his home, because he invited all the sannyasis, because it was a privilege to invite great souls into your home and then serve them, offer food. You will get purified by that. And especially if you can eat their remnants, touch the dust from their feet, and also drink the charanamrita, which means the water by which you washed their feet. These three things are considered that you can advance very much spiritually if you do that. So everyone wants to do that. So he invited all the sannyasis, and also he wanted to invite Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came into his house, so in this Vedic way of life, when you enter a house, you cannot wear shoes, and you always have to wash your shoes. So if you haven't been in India, you will understand definitely why that is so, because everywhere you walk, you walk barefoot, and your feet are always dirty. So he washed his feet, which means it's a dirty place, but he didn't go where the other sannyasis were sitting, but he sat in that place where the feet were washed. And he just exhibited effulgence, and since these sannyasis were impersonalistic sannyasis, and they were very much attracted to Brahman or Brahmajyoti effulgence, they were attracted to him. So he was tricking them in a way with this, but also showing his humility. And then they felt like compassion because of this showing of humility, and they approached him and they started asking him questions like, why do you act this way? Why do you act like a madman? And you exhibit all these things, and you should study Vedanta with us. And then he starts to preach to them, like why he's doing this, what is actually the Maha Mantra. And what he says to them, that the conclusion of the whole, even he quotes the Srimad Bhagavatam, that says that so reading Vedanta, performing sacrifices, performing various duties in life, none of it matters if you don't chant the holy name of the Lord. So basically he said, what you, in a nice way, what you are doing is nothing actually, but what I'm doing is irrelevant. And he quoted the Vedas which they study. So in the end they surrendered to him. But just that this tolerance and humility and accepting everything that comes to our life is a part of the life of a devotee. And we need to learn how to do that, and sometimes it can be very difficult. So to go back to the story of my spiritual master, he just gave an example, and it was a good example, how he felt. So he was a person who was already living in the temple. He was not a grihasta but a brahmachari, and he would go during the week to book distribution, and then on the weekends he would go back to the temple and to rest or something. And usually they would ask him to give lectures. And the lectures he was giving in this month, when he would come on these weekends, were about this Jalbharata. And at that time, whenever he would come to the temple president would criticize him publicly in front of everyone. And he felt really, really hurt. But he's the kind of person who doesn't say it at all. You couldn't see it on him. He was suffering inside, but still, even though we don't say it out loud, we don't say to our friends, oh, this person, she did or he did this and this to me. Even if we don't say it, but we still feel it inside, it means that there are some things we didn't let go. But he was the one who didn't speak about it, so he just kept it for himself. And every weekend he would come, every time this temple president, he would just get on his case. He just didn't understand why is he doing these things, and he felt so hurt, and he couldn't understand what was going on. And then this one weekend, temple president was not here, and he was supposed to give 3 times lectures, like in days in a row, and about Jadabharata, and especially about these verses that you will read a little bit further on. Just that I find it. So yeah. So King Rahugana, he was very sarcastical towards Jadabharata. So in a way, I guess this person who was speaking to my spiritual master was also like that. And then Jadabharata replied to him. You will see what he said. It's not so. It's like some words that were not so very nice. He was very sarcastic. He offended him and so on. And then he said, Jadabharata, my dear king and hero, whatever you have spoken sarcastically is certainly true. Actually, these are not simply words of chastisement, for the body is the These are not simply words of chastisement, for the body is the carrier. The Lord carried by the body does not belong to me, for I am a spirit soul. So basically, whatever you said to me, like that I'm stupid, lame, lazy, whatever you said I was doing, well, yeah, that's my body, but that's not me. It has nothing to do with me. I'm the spirit soul. And then he says, there is no contradiction in your statements, because I am different from the body. I am not the carrier of the palanquin. The body is the carrier. Certainly, as you have hinted, I have not labored carrying the palanquin, for I am detached from the body. You have said that I am not stout and strong, and these words are befitting a person who does not know the distinction between the body and the soul. The body may be fat or thin, but no learned man would say such a thing of the spirit soul. So basically, if someone tells you you're fat, ugly, or skinny, it has nothing to do with you. It's just this body that you received according to your karma, and it will anyway perish, and you are something else. As far as the spirit soul is concerned, I'm neither fat or skinny. Therefore, you are correct when you say that I am not very stout. I have no idea what this stout means. Do you know? We can have a look. Also, if the object of this journey and the path leading there were mine, there would be many troubles for me. But because they relate not to me, but to my body, there is no trouble at all. So basically, whatever happened to his life, for him it was not a trouble. What he ate, how people treated him, even when he was one. I mean, he accepted to be offered to Goddess Kali. He just said like, okay, because he just accepted everything as his karma and just went on. So this is like a true realization. So my spiritual master was speaking about this lecture, and then he had like enlightenment or whatever he had, but he became very happy because he realized, actually, I'm not this body, and whatever this guy even criticizes and says to me has nothing to do with me. Like, I'm spirit soul. So he became very happy, and then, next time when he saw the temple president, he was waiting, like, let's see what he'll say. And the guy never said anything to him in his life again. So this is also a thing, like, we have to realize that sometimes also people in our life, they're instruments of our karma. And sometimes they act in a way which is like, what's wrong with you? But you can't control it. They're just there doing this because they're under the influence of the modes of material nature, and because they are under the influence of these modes, they become the perfect instrument for whatever they are exhibiting at that moment. So, and also that's why we say we hate the sin but not the sinner, because every person can also change. So this is just a momentary exhibition of something due to the conditioning, and also due to our karma we are receiving it. So basically, once I was complaining to Atmanivedana Swami about it, and he said, yes, whatever happens, you just say, yes, thank you. And you accept it, and I was thinking like, yeah, right. I mean, I said it, yeah, right, because I know myself, I'm quite a fiery person, I like justice, and then it's like, I'm not gonna accept that, but I have to. So anyway, this person never ever criticized my spiritual master. And then I think 10 or 20, 15 or 20 years passed by, and then I don't know why, in which context, maybe because he was reading this again, Srimad Bhagavatam, my spiritual master, and then he started telling this story. Like whenever he would give lectures about Jadabharata and Maharaja Hugana, he would remember it, and then, but he gave it as an example, like how he also realized what Jadabharata realized. And then, the word spread out that he's telling this story, and therefore the temple president also found out about this story. And then once, so it was like, I think 30 years passed by, and then they met. And this temple president, he didn't stay in the temple. He got married and he had his family and so on. So he's like a grihasta, and my spiritual master is a sannyasi. And then he came to him once and he said, like, I heard you were telling this lecture about this temple president who was criticizing you all the time. Like, and then he said, but that was like really sweet and humble. And then he said, like, was it me? Like, who criticized you? And then my Guru Maharaj, he said, like, you know something? It doesn't matter because of you I had this realization. So I have to be thankful for you, to you. And then he just said, I thank you very much. And he offered his obeisances and hugged the person. And he felt like very embarrassed. And he said like, oh, what will happen to me? You are a sannyasi and I'm a grihasta. And I have offended you. But he said like, you didn't offend me. You helped me like to understand actually who I am. So, can you do it? When someone treats you badly. Another example is Haridas Thakur, who, these are all of course exalted personalities, and we can say that's an excuse for us because we are not so exalted. And of course we should not imitate things. Like if someone abuses us, we should, tell this person you are abusing me. And because sometimes people, they take these stories and then they say, yeah, but you have to tolerate, because that's the way it is. No, these exalted personalities, they tolerated because they had a vision, they had a realization. So if Jadabharata, for example, if he didn't have a realization that he's a spirit soul, how could he tolerate all that was happening in his life? It's not possible. So when you have this realization, like really you have it, then, and nobody can actually tell you how to behave. You act naturally out of your realization, right? So it's totally like nobody forced you to do it, nobody quoted the scriptures. It's just something that comes from your heart because you realize that you're a spirit soul. So in the same sense, Haridas Thakur, he had definitely a realization that he's a spirit soul, and he exhibited his humility by always sticking to the Maha Mantra and not allowing anyone to convince him that he should not chant it. Because of that, he was beaten in 22, I think, marketplaces, because at that time there were Muslims and Hindus and maybe some other religions, but the administrators or the governors or the kings, I don't know who was there, they would allow you to practice your religion. But if you were a Muslim, which Haridas Thakur was, and he was practicing what was according to him a Hindu religion, then he'd said like, no, it's too much mixed up. Like, you can be religious, you can be spiritual, but you quote Quran, don't quote, Vedas and chant the Maha Mantra here, and I don't know. So because he wouldn't listen, and he would chant the holy name of the Lord, he was beaten. So the governor, Qazi, I guess, I don't remember exactly, but he ordered Haridas Thakur to be beaten on 22 markets. And then they were beating him, and he was accepting, like, okay, I'll be beaten, I don't care. But because he was so focused in the Lord, and Lord Chaitanya, he didn't, I don't know if he appeared already or didn't appear, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, he knows everything because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he said, like, when I saw you being beaten on those marketplaces, I just couldn't handle that you were suffering so much. So therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he offered his back to be beaten. So Haridas Thakur didn't feel anything and nothing happened to him. And later on, when they met, Haridas Thakur and Lord Chaitanya told him about that, and then he showed him his back, and they were like with scratches to show him that he was actually accepting this. But let's go back to the story when they were beating him. So these soldiers or whatever they were, some people who were trying to fulfill the orders of Qazi, they were beating him, but the order was that they have to beat him to death. And there was like a 20-second market of beating, and the guy didn't want to die. And they were desperate because they knew that if he doesn't die, they will die, because Qazi will kill them because they didn't fulfill like the order of his order. And then Haridas Thakur, he felt compassion towards people who were beating him, and he decided to die. But he had mystical powers, so basically he exhibited everything in his body like he died, but he didn't die. In the end, they threw him into the river, and there he just went his way and so on. But the point is that at that time, even though he had these mystical powers and he was protected by Krishna, he was thinking about his, molesters who were molesting him. So these kind of stories, they show us like what is the heart of the devotee, what is the realization of the devotee, and what we should one day achieve. And later on he will say that why he's behaving this way. He says that everything in this world that exists to take us away from Krishna. That's why he didn't want to even talk to people, because everything people are is created by mind and illusion. Society is created by illusion as well. And of course it exists, but that's not what we are. It is needed, like all these structures in the society, all the roles that we play, they are needed so that we can act and that we can purify ourselves, and then in the end find out that we are not actually this body but spirit soul. So he didn't want to have anything to do with it. So then he talks about, and you will see, about society, about family. I mean, even when he talks about family, he says that wife and children are plunderers. So like, why? Someone would say like, how can you say that? Like, I love my family. It's because a child comes to the father and says, Daddy, Daddy, I need this. Daddy, I need that. Daddy, I need this. Can you help me with this? Can I do that? And so on. And what does this mean for your consciousness? It means that you will have to be focused on your child all the time, on his needs of his body. And what are you focused on is on an illusion. The same is with the wife or a husband, doesn't matter. Oh, I need this, oh, I need that, oh, can we do this? Oh, now I don't know, now I feel like this, now I feel like that. Which is okay, and we should do it. But if we go to understand what we really are and what is this world, it's just a distraction. So that's why, but this also is not something we imitate. It's not like, oh, it's written in the scriptures, therefore I detach myself from everything. I leave my wife, my children. But if you don't have this understanding, then everyone will suffer. You will suffer, and you will probably get a new wife and children because your attachment will exhibit itself again. And your other family will suffer because they will think you're crazy because you left them this way. So even like in the stories in Chaitanya Charitamrita, when we see like how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for example, at 24 took sannyas, and he left his wife, he left his mother, and both of them were unprotected because his brother, he also took sannyas, so it was like he died because it's when you take a sannyas, you're excluded from the society. Today's sannyasis are not as it was before in that sense. And his mother also, she didn't have any protection. Her husband passed away, so Jagannath Mishra was not there, so he left his mother and wife unprotected. But you know, these are of course people, this is a real life, these are exalted personalities, and they do suffer, but it's different, it's transcendental. When these things happened, so many wonderful things happened, and all these personality, they exhibit such qualities that you were like wow. Like for example, Vishnupriya, when he left, he gave her his shoes to worship and a deity, and she showed her understanding that she's also not this body, because she would, of course, very devotionally in separation worship the deity of Mahaprabhu. That deity is still there. I saw it. That's why I mentioned it, because I really liked it. It's in Navadvip, Dameshwar Mahaprabhu. So you can see that deity that she worshipped and the shoes as well. and you can, if you're lucky, get the shoes on your head also. So that's very nice. And she would, I think, she would chant and then put 1 grain of rice into the bowl. And because she was chanting Guranga and Mahamantra all the time, the names of the Lord. And she would just eat that at the end of the day, as much as rice as she has chanted. So who can do that? Like, only a person who understands that it's not he, she is not the body, and that's he, she's the spirit soul, actually. I don't know, it's a she actually, because the soul is Prakriti, has a female energy. So anyway, this is the language thing. So I will stop here because it's now 8:30. So this is the story where we will learn, we will try to understand and maybe get mercy, because we can pray. Srimad Bhagavatam is a person, it's a literal incarnation of Krishna. So, and also my experience is that if we really want to understand sometimes knowledge that comes from Srimad Bhagavatam, we have to pray and also allow it to happen in our lives. For example, maybe you had these experiences that when you read Srimad Bhagavatam, then things that you read about start to happen in your life. Because then you sort of like, oh yeah, that's true, like it's written in Srimad Bhagavatam like this, and now I see it in my life or in the world. Or so in that sense, you can see, like, for example, in the example of my spiritual master, he was giving lectures of it, and the same thing happened to him, and therefore he had this realization by reading it. So this is how we can advance now in spiritual knowledge. And also, please remember not to imitate the exalted, this is for everyone and for me, not to imitate exalted personalities, but allow yourself to naturally come to this, because it's possible. This is a process. We were given a process. Spiritual master gives us rules and regulations to follow the 4 regulative principles and the Maha Mantra. And everything will come naturally if you chant. Like, if someone tells you, I don't know, you are, for example, 55, and someone tells you, well, now is the time you have to take Vanaprastha, you should leave everything and go away, because the scriptures say so. You can't do it if you don't feel it. But if it naturally comes through following the process, then you will naturally do it. Nobody will have to tell you, convince you, because it's something, that comes naturally from the soul that got purified. So, yeah. Thank you for your attention. Do you have questions or comments, or found something interesting?
Thank you for the very nice lecture. I feel like I learned so many things, like from different stories that you told. But really stuck with me, like what you said, like towards the towards the ending, with the process that you have to feel it in a different way, because I think we tend to take what's from the scriptures and just apply, like put it on top of our feelings or thoughts or whatever, and then we kind of suppress things probably.
Yeah.
And that was always a point where I was like, but how healthy is it? Is it like contradictory to like personal development or something, because you want to develop your soul and your behavior and everything. So that was really a very nice take for that.
Yeah, it comes naturally. It says that the one who, but in a proper way, starts to worship Krishna, and you can see that, like if there's something in Krishna consciousness that you are doing in, for example, gardening, let's say, because today you're gonna do the gardening in here, and like that you're coming here and that you're serving Krishna and you do this for Krishna, and then after this service you feel happy, like content, right? And if someone comes to you and says you are an idiot, I don't think you will be mad at him, because there's a satisfaction of the heart, and people cannot disturb you very easily like that. So this is just a small example, but it can go deeper and deeper, and the deepest realization is that we are a spirit soul, and then even more deep, that there is Krishna who is in our heart, with whom we have a relationship, and that everything around us is actually Krishna. It is said by, I think Bhaktivinoda or Bhaktisiddhanta, they said that the only true reality in this world is Jiva and God. Not everything else is an illusion. So Even when I look at you and you, I approach you with, I mean, that should be the perfect understanding. I approach you as a servant of Krishna, and also when I give my respects to you, I give the respect to the Krishna situated in your heart. So, yeah, so if we see these things, and that's why, like, family people, and this also, this has to come naturally. So we all think this is mine, but the person who knows that this, he or she is a spirit soul, he says, like, these are Krishna's servants. Like, my children are cowherd boys and girls of Krishna, and my wife and, I don't know, mother are the gopis, you know. So but this is a spiritual understanding. So, but it comes. You can't say it if you don't have it. Like, so in that sense, yeah, it will come naturally through the chanting of the Maha Mantra. So,
and what is the balance between like being tolerant or learning to be tolerant, and then rectifying someone, because sometimes it's necessary, because I mean it's nice for us to try to be tolerant and progress, but sometimes in some situation we really have to, because it can harm other being, or so that sometimes I'm struggling with this. Like, should I say something, or I mean, I don't take personally, but I know it's not good, so it's complicated.
Yeah, we should always help others and protect them. And the Vedas, which were given by God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they prescribe it. Especially, like, if someone is aggressive and attacks you, you have a right to defend yourself. So these are like principles of life you can live by. And you should live by them. And especially when we talk about, like, tolerance and humility, it's about us. So if someone else is, like, if we are tormented, then we tolerate. And I will just read one more verse that talks about it, because it's important. But if someone else is treated badly, then we of course will do everything to protect them. Like, so these are like differences, because for yourself, you yourself practice this tolerance and humility, but that doesn't mean that other people have to, you know. So sometimes also people, they like to impose things on others. Like, something happens to you, I don't know, to you something happened and you felt very bad. But how would you feel if I come to you? Well, you have to tolerate it, it's your karma. Like, we should not speak to people like that. We should empathize, yes, and we should help them. And all these things about tolerance and humility and giving respect to others, it's about us. Like, you take it as your own personal instruction, don't impose it to other people. So that's how you do it. And you, of course, sometimes we make a mistake, but it's also okay, because how can you learn if you don't make a mistake? There is no right answer sometimes as well, because every situation is different and every person is different also. For example, I will always say something, my husband won't. And sometimes he tolerates things that I would never tolerate, like at work. And then he says, yes, but Krishna gave me this situation and I have to learn something from that. So if you have that understanding, go for it. If you don't have that understanding, in a polite and assertive way, you know, there is non-violent communication, you can always express yourself in a nice way. So that's what, but maybe someone else would have a nicer answer. But this is what I can think of for now. But there's just one more thing and then I'll leave you. It's really nice. And I can't find it now. It's from Srimad Bhagavatam and it's quoted very often by my spiritual master. And then I have a headache because I sometimes feel that I cannot fulfill it. But he said that I don't have to, that it also comes natural. I should not, try to. I think it's here. Yeah. So it's a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 14, Text 8. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering your respectful obeisances, and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. And this is where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes and he says, yes, do this and chant Maha Mantra, and that's how you go back home, back to Godhead. Yeah. Just for your information, that's what you do. So, yeah. Thank you for being patient with me. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, and Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
No?
Yeah.
Oh, I saw that.
Power.
Oh, when is it? 9?
So this is for you.
Oh.
I hope you will like it. It's actually silk japa.
Oh, wow.
And then
Next level. Thank you
it's
so
so
much.
fancy.
Yay.
Found it finally. So
Nice letter.
thanks. This one is for you stuff. It's nice.
But I get it too. So nice. Wow. Love it. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm happy that I had a 5 days in a row service, so now I'm happy I can go home.
Nice to finally.
Yeah.
Well, it was a really nice lecture. It seems like you have so much energy and it's so lively. Even on Sunday.
Thank you.
It's really nice.
I like to do it.
Yeah, and that's what you can feel, you know, as a listener you see, okay, you make so many connections, you really love these stories and you take everybody with you and you're like, I feel like it wouldn't even be so interesting when I would read it because you're like, this and this and this. It's so
That's why
nice.
it's nice to discuss it like with other people. So
Yeah.
And then it becomes, because then you the things that you missed maybe in the text, then you oh really that's it.
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes I feel like even, I mean, in my job, you learn a few things only when you have to teach it to somebody
Yeah,
else.
you know that.
And then you're like, oh, okay, it's, yeah,
Yeah.
a win-win.
I find it interesting, and then I like because maybe because I was now in Mayapur also, and then I saw
Mhm.
all these things like first you read about it, but it's very abstract. I'm not saying that it becomes very concrete when you come there, but still it's like you're in these places, and then you can somehow remember. Like for example, that temple that I showed you on Sunday.
Yeah.
I was there and I was thinking like because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, all this that we were discussing on that day, just summarized it, and he just said, okay, and this is like this, like it's not so complicated. You don't have to, go through all this literature,
Mhm.
and then you see that all these persons had a function, which like it's like a path that took you to this place, and Srila Prabhupada as well. And then when you read when you start reading all these books, not just his books, but like other books, which are like, you should not read them before you read Prabhupada's books, which is okay. And then you read them and then you realize that actually he made it so simple. He said everything that they said, but you understand it because he was speaking your language. So, yeah. So then you feel more grateful
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I always like to learn, so I'm a nerd.
That's nice. It's a good thing. So good. Okay, you're going home now as well?
Yes, I change and then I go home.
Okay, have a good rest then.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
And thank you for making this possible. I just wrote it, when somebody wrote something, can I bring da da da? It's like, yeah, this I always wanted. She's not gonna find it. I mean, it's so rare. I hardly see it on people, right?
It is rare because I was
Yeah.
I was buying saris. Like I was in a it's like their shops are not like our shops. It
Yeah.
was more like a tent and then you enter inside because it was a festival day anyway. But so there were a lot of like tents. It was like a marketplace with tents. And I was just in one tent, like looking at the saris
Okay.
and buying for the shop, and then this lady just, are you interested in golden kalachas? And I'm like,
What?
okay.
Wow.
Yeah, otherwise,
She was dealing with them, you know. Yeah, somehow. Wow, what a timing, divine timing. When you wrote it, I was like, no way. How
I
is
said-
it possible?
I said like yes, because actually my friend, she asked me.
Probably the day before or something, I don't know. Yeah, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Hare Krishna.